Hello and welcome to our episode, New Ways of Thinking, Breaking the Cycle, Restorative Justice in Northern Arizona. I am your co-host, Hector Ballesteros.
And I'm your co-host, Ricky Williams.
This episode is part of the podcast series, Punishment in the High Country. This series is produced by NAU criminal justice students and discusses incarceration in Northern Arizona.
Today, we'll be discussing restorative justice. What is it, why is it needed, and how is it being implemented in Arizona?
This episode will feature interviews with Northern Arizona Restorative Justice and organizations focused on restorative justice for juveniles, as well as interview with a detention officer in Coconino County.
Tucked within the nation that holds the world's highest incarceration rate is the state of Arizona. The state has patriotically followed the American dream as it turns to cages to solve social problems. 5th highest incarceration rate in the country. But could there be another way? Is it possible for Arizona to move away from lockup?
While talking to Jeremy Hawkins, the director of Northern Arizona Restorative Justice, or NRJ, NRJ's mission is to spread restorative justice, values, and practice throughout the greater Northern Arizona region. Later you will hear from Rochelle Brunson, a member of NARJ and the principal of Summit High School, who's been working to implement restorative justice practices at her school.
We heard Jeremy discussing what he called the old way of locking everyone up. This method is often referred to as retributive justice.
Yes, retributive justice is traditionally focused on ensuring the offender is punished in proportion to their offense without necessarily considering rehabilitation or the needs of the victims and communities. For example, listen to Detention Officer Justin Lee's description of a typical day of an individual in jail.
When it comes to reoffenders is a big deal because we get a lot of reoffenders every time. And the thing is that we call them 1016s. A lot of them are mental subjects. So a lot of these folks need some rehabilitation for drugs. In detentions, we call it long gone, where, we have them locked, they're in close custody. So these reoffenders, they're in close custody. They're 23 hours within their cells. It's very difficult because us detention officers, we are not social workers, right? We can't help them every day of their lives. Even though, sometimes we could send them to the guidance center here in Flagstaff. We have the capability of doing that. It just depends how long their sentencing is. If their sentencing is, more than 3 months, then sure, we're able to take them to the guidance center where they can see social counsels. But if not, they stay within our solitary confinement or our close custody for their own protection. The hardest part is if their sentencing is very minimal. Once they get released, they'll come back. We try to do the best we can to help them out.
Here, the use of solitary confinement and locking up repeat offenders in close custody mirrors traditional retributive practices, where punishment is central, often regardless of root causes like mental health or addiction. This shows the need for a change. That is where restorative justice comes into play.
NARJ defines restorative justice as a type of justice that consists of both proactive elements, defining shared values, building character, and developing a sense of community, as well as reactive elements, consulting individuals for minor infractions and providing group consultation or community circles for more serious infractions.
This means that there is a higher focus on fixing the damage and more opportunities to be heard by the victims.
Research on restorative justice has found that those who follow this approach experience lower levels of anger and fear than those who do not. This research shows that restorative justice is a promising way to help both victim and offender. There is an emphasis on balance within restorative justice.
Yes, this balance supports effective communication and meaningful dialogue, despite the circumstantial levels of vulnerability between the two opposing parties.
Additional support for restorative justice comes from a study done on juveniles. This case study done in Maricopa County showed that juveniles which were provided with restorative justice methods and values had lower recidivism rates than those who did not. This shows that there is a potential to reduce recidivism and incarceration rates.
The group who went through the program was less likely to commit another offense by a third compared to those who didn't.
These findings are very important because imagine if we scope restorative justice to our incarcerated population as a whole. We currently have 1.8 million people incarcerated within the United States in our federal prisons, state prisons, jails, and private prisons.
If these findings hold and we can take the same principles and apply them to our current system, we could have only 600,000 people incarcerated. Even if we take Arizona as an example, we would have 34,000 individuals incarcerated. that number could potentially be cut down to 11,300 individuals.
Talking to Rochelle Bronson, we found out about the impact that the implementation of restorative justice has had on Summit High School.
Implementing restorative practice throughout Northern Arizona has been a challenge, but more so about how it's integrated into programs. The one in Yavapai County called the Journey Program is youth that are in detention. They are considered outpatients, but they're on probation.
Okay.
And so we've been able to collaborate with the probation officers to implement restorative circles with them and their families. In the last 3 years since we've been involved, the rate of graduating that program has been above 75%.
Restorative justice is also alive and active in Northern Arizona communities today. For starters, Navajo Nation courts follow peacemaking practices that are traditional to Native Americans.
Both involve a higher level of participation on the side of the victim and a focus on healing and forgiveness after the wrongdoing. The parallels between these two practices become clear when listening to this clip from the interview that we did with NARJ.
Reward for being good.
Gotcha.
Where restorative practice is more about the building relationships and connections, and then when someone has done harm, they repair that harm and hold themselves accountable, and they identify the people that they've harmed and how they might fix that.
What this means overall, instead of just giving out punishments like suspension, detention, or jail, restorative practices aim to teach responsibility, heal relationships, and prevent future harm by involving everyone in the solution, especially the person who caused harm and those affected by it. But the truth is, even when people want to move toward these kinds of solutions, they often hit a wall because the system still leans heavily on punishment. And that's not just theory. We actually talked to someone who sees this up close.
In our own detention center here in Coconino County, we have also heard about budgeting issues and the lack of resources for rehabilitation in our criminal justice system. Next, we will listen to an interview with a local sheriff officer who works at the correctional center.
Within the whole facility of 500 folks, we only have one counselor.
Yeah.
And he works 5 days out of the week. So with that being said, it's very difficult to try to maintain, especially with our 1016s for mental subject folks, that there are about more than 35, 40 folks that are mental subjects that reoffend all the time. That, they come from either detoxing or they come from, other drugs that, we have to find a way to, either have more counselors within the facility. It's just difficult because our budgeting within corrections is very minimal.
The systemic emphasis on punishment over rehabilitation due to lack of resources supports a punitive structure. As we could hear, there are officers and other social or law enforcement agents who notice the issue. The funds are directed in particular areas overseen by punitive policies. It is obvious to see these agents are unable to make real change.
Restorative justice is an extremely important process that we do not use enough within the United States. It is a growing process that we are now seeing expanded within our Sheriff's Department in Flagstaff, as well as Summit High School. The Sheriff's Department sees the need to help a lot of reoffenders who need more of a social worker touch, which has been expanding at a higher rate than before.
Summit High School has prided itself on being the last destination for troubled kids who need that second chance. Practicing many restorative justice practices like community circles and having a mentor for these kids to be able to call and talk out their feelings with is crucial for their development.
While talking with our interviewees, we realized sheriff officers and restorative justice practitioners feel the need for more restorative justice, but the problem is how to implement it within our community. Resources and money seem to be the biggest issue, as well as the negative connotation that can come with restorative justice.
While talking with Sheriff Officer Justin, we realized that the Coconino County Sheriff's Office are really just beginning their restorative justice efforts, adding major improvements like extended pathways, creating more jobs for social workers, and individuals with experience when it comes to restorative justice.
NARJ has a way for everyone to take part and practice restorative justice here in Flagstaff. Summit High School regularly puts on restorative justice training for you to become a mentor to those who need someone else to talk to. This involves kids, so having a younger mentor, such as college students, would be very important and insightful for them.
If you would like some more information on restorative justice and would like to participate, we have a handout for anyone who would be interested. Thank you so much for listening and being engaged in our podcast and insight on restorative justice within Arizona and Flagstaff. Thanks again for listening to our episode, New Ways of Thinking, Breaking the Cycle.